All right, welcome in to another episode of Chicago Sports Overtime. Tina Nguyen hanging out here with Chris Kwiecinski as we talk a little bit of March Madness. Yeah, right, Chris. The field is set. 68 teams were celebrating yesterday. Now they're getting ready to put on their dancing shoes. We've got the #1 seeds right here. We've got Auburn, Duke, Houston, and Florida. All right, but let's start in the South region. Chris, give me your early impressions of this.
This is an interesting region to look at specifically if you want to start with the #1 overall seed, Auburn, a team that limped a little bit into the tournament, that surprised me a little bit when they got the #1 overall seed. I thought it was going to be Houston. They went with Auburn instead. But this Louisville-Creighton game right in here, this is the most interesting one to think about because Creighton's a talented team. They won the Big East tournament. They've given UConn a run for the money a handful of times. They're going to test Auburn if they get past an upstart Louisville team here. Down here specifically is where we can look at some upsets.
Okay. Do you think there's some recency bias right now with Auburn? I feel like some people are shying away from them a little bit because they're coming into this tournament losing 3 of their last 4 games.
I think there is. I think Bruce Pearl has got this team humming, but like you said, they're humming a little bit of the wrong time, a little bit of the wrong direction too, but I think their regular season resume is what got them to the #1 overall seed.
All right, you mentioned this right here, this matchup right here. This is the matchup that I am watching because did I go to Texas A&M? Yes, I did. And it pains me to say this, but I think there's a potential upset here. Yale defeating the Aggies because A&M, they're not great at defending the three-point line, and Yale's a really good shooting team, but especially three-point shooting team as well.
I know that must have hurt you. I know that must have been a dagger right in the chest, but that's okay. But I think A&M's chances are a lot better than what you think. I think they're a very talented team. If they can score the basketball and control the game, I think they'll beat Yale, especially when it comes to this game right here, too. A lot of people are talking about UC San Diego as an upset pick, but Michigan's riding a hot streak, winning the Big Ten tournament. Was it just a completely interesting way to showcase how clutch this Michigan team is. Trey Donaldson, one of the most clutch players in the Big Ten, showed it off in the Big Ten tournament.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the other. Here we go. All right, so we've got Ole Miss as a 6th seed against a play-in game right here, San Diego State or UNC. Thoughts on UNC? Because this is a hot topic right now.
West Virginia should have been in the tournament. UNC, a very talented team. We know that a couple of years ago, they made a run all the way to the championship game as an 8th seed. We know that they're talented. It's North Carolina. You can't look past them, but at the same time, I don't think they should have been in the tournament. But in any case, this right here is a good test for Chris Beard's team. San Diego State's a very talented team as well. At an 11th seed, that's a difficult matchup. Obviously, they're going to play very good defense. San Diego State will. But Ole Miss has the firepower. They have the team to go past there. And they also have a good chance to go not just to Saturday, but to the Sweet 16 as well, because you have an Iowa State team that's limping a little bit right now, missing some key players.
Talk to me about Michigan State. Tom Izzo and his team making, 27 straight appearances in the Big Dance. Do you think they can pull out some really tight wins here?
See, we talked about this earlier. I think Michigan State has the best chance and the easiest road to the Sweet 16, but also the Final Four as well. This is one of the best Michigan State teams that we've seen in a long time. I think back to the 2019 season when that team went to the Final Four. The reason why is because they had a very talented point guard named Cassius Winston. This year, Jeremy Fears Jr. is that point guard for Michigan State. He's talented, he's fearless, and he's experienced. He came back from a tragic gunshot injury that took away his entire freshman season, but now he's back. And we saw him when he came to Northwestern, when he played in Evanston. This dude is fearless. He does what he needs to do in order to win games. Michigan State's always needed a player like that. They have it in Fears. And they have it that's going to go against a Marquette team that we saw almost lose to DePaul here in Chicago. New Mexico State's a very talented team as well. They're not talented enough to beat Michigan State, in my opinion. Iowa State, without Keyshawn Gilbert, that's tough ass too. Ole Miss, they're a talented team, but they didn't finish in the top half of the SEC for a reason.
When you look at this region, what is a first-round matchup that you're really looking forward to watching?
Man, give me Michigan State and New Mexico. We've seen Michigan State struggle with some mid-majors at time to time. I think back to when Tom Izzo lost to Middle Tennessee State a handful of years ago as a 2 losing to a 15 seed. That's not going to happen again this year. Michigan State's in my Final Four. We'll get to that later. But right now, when you talk about a New Mexico State team that can score points, Richard Pitino's a really good coach. That's going to be a tough test for Michigan State in the second round because I think New Mexico is going to beat Marquette.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look now at the East region, and it is, of course, led by Duke as the #1 seed. And the biggest storyline in this region is, of course, the health of Cooper Flagg.
I know. Not that it's overblown, But it's one of those things you're going to have to monitor in this specific game here because they don't know who they're playing yet. They're going to have to do some last-second cramming, some final study when it comes to there. But they're also a very talented team. They're a very good team. They're not a #1 seed for no reason. This is the Duke teams of old. John Shire's done a fantastic job kind of rebuilding that brand and kind of pushing them up front. But it's going to be a tough test for this Mississippi State team is one to watch. I think they get past Baylor pretty easily. Chris Jans is a really good coach. He can come up with some of the most fantastic defenses you've ever seen, but this Mississippi State team matches that defensive intensity with a lot of scoring.
All right. Talk to me about Oregon and Liberty. We talked off camera about this. We both really like this matchup. Oregon, to me, I feel like they don't blow really teams away, but Liberty, a team that can definitely score. You gotta, score over 70 points against them because they're 25-0 when they score more than 70.
You set the nail on the head, and that's a tough task for an Oregon team, which has been really inconsistent this season as well. This Liberty team, obviously you see the 12 seed, obviously you see the mid-major status, and you think, hey, Oregon should win this game. I think they should. But Liberty is a tougher task that a lot of people are going to think of. A lot of people are going to point to the Midwest region to see teams like McNeese and High Point and say, hey, those are some upset alerts. This is the biggest upset alert in the first round, in my opinion, especially when you want to talk about a double-digit seed going over a single-digit seed as well. And don't sleep on Akron either.
I was going to say, they have never won a tournament game.
They haven't, but this is a really good opportunity. Caleb Love and Arizona are, when they're on, I don't know if there's anyone in this team, in this entire bracket specifically that's going to stop them. But when they're not shooting and having a great night, I think Akron can take advantage of it. And you never know. In basketball, it just could be your night. But also, it might not be your night.
All right, Akron, they are averaging about 84.6 points a game. Let's go ahead and take a look at the other games that are also in the East region. BYU, VCU. Why do we like this first round matchup, Chris?
This is a fantastic matchup. We're talking about the
strength versus strength for this one.
Exactly. It's defense with VCU versus offense with BYU. Give me defense and give me experience and give me depth in the NCAA tournament every single time. Kevin Smith has done a fantastic job with BYU in his first season. I do give him a lot of credit, but VCU won the A-10 tournament for a reason. They were able to hold off teams with that defense late in the game. When you think about specifically BYU, sure, they can shoot the ever-living lights out of the basketball. They've brought a lot of excitement back to Provo. But right now, VCU, I think, has the defense to really stymie that offense, move to the second round, but also get past Wisconsin. And I know I'm big sky repping right now with Montana, but unfortunately, I don't think Montana has what it takes to get past Wisconsin's offense and defense, the combination the Badgers have there.
Talk to me about Alabama and Robert Morris, because this Alabama team can really, really score. They've scored, 90 points, over 90 points 18 times this season.
When they're cooking, no one's going to stop them. But you know what it takes to stop an Alabama team when they're cooking? I think back to when Mizzou beat Alabama. Mizzou had to put up over 100 points to beat an Alabama team when they were firing on all those cylinders, which tells me a couple things. One, Alabama can score. Man, can this team score. Mark Sears is one of the best scoring players in the league, if not the entire nation right now. But they also give up a lot of points as well. You got to watch that, and especially for a team like Vanderbilt that knows Alabama. Also a St. Mary's team, which is experienced, that can go up and kind of catch Alabama off guard a little bit too.
When you look at the East region overall, obviously we're expecting Cooper Flagg to be back for this tournament. Do you think this will be, how difficult of a task will this be for Duke to make it to the Final Four?
See, I'm watching. When it comes to the Elite Eight, when it comes to that specific game, I picked Alabama to go up against Duke. My question with Duke is, we've seen them in a handful of games this year already where they have played close games. Can they close? We've seen them struggle to close out games. The Clemson-Duke game where Dickie V returned, and it was a fantastic game. Cooper Flagg had a chance to tie the game at the end. Turnover. We've seen that a couple times this year too. I question if Duke can close out games that are close against high-profile teams, but Duke has the talent to get to the Final Four, no question.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the Midwest region. Houston, of course, is the #1 overall seed here, and I gotta say, if this is the year Houston can win a national championship, I think this is, because this group that Kelvin Sampson has, this is a very experienced group, veteran group.
Like I said earlier, in the NCAA tournament, if you have experience, if you have depth, and if you have the talent, those things will win you games. But Houston is a combination of all three. It's rare you have a combination of all three. Houston has it. They also have very good coaching. Kelvin Sampson, don't write that guy off. I like to shout out SIU Edwardsville making their first ever first ever NCAA tournament. It's just a real tough draw when you get a juggernaut like Houston, which finds a way to just negate teams, but also find a way to take advantage of their mistakes.
Houston coming into this tournament having won 26 of their last 27 games. They've only lost one game since November 30th. That's a really long time. All right, Purdue and High Point. Potential upset here, yes or no? I've heard a lot of people are actually picking High Point here.
You know, I picked High Point too in one of my brackets. And the reason why is because they're experienced, because also they can score a lot. We've also seen Purdue kind of falter in first rounds. Think back a couple years ago. They lost to Fairleigh Dickinson in the first round as a #1 seed, losing to a 16 team. The second time that's ever happened. That's tough. But we saw last year as well, if they start clicking in the tournament, there's no ceiling to how far Purdue can go. And it's one of those upset games we're looking at earlier, but also this is one of those games too. Clemson is a very experienced team, but so is McNeese State, led by head coach Will Wade.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very talented coach. He's a very good coach. If there's ever a game that we might see a double-digit over 5 seed, I think it's McNeese here, but don't overrule or don't overlook Clemson's experience in this specific aspect.
All right. And of course, when we talk about the Midwest region, we got to, of course, talk about Illinois, Brad Underwood, and the Illini. What is this? 5th straight appearance for them in the big dance here. I mean, how far do you think realistically Illinois can go? It's been a season for them. It's been a season,
but if you're an Illini fan, you got a really good draw in this specific tournament.
And this is their first time playing against a play-in team as well.
Oh yeah, but the problem is here, not the problem. I say this is a very good problem if you're Illinois to have. Texas and Xavier were on the bubble. They snuck into the tournament. We're looking at this team right here. Texas is obviously in the SEC. They've won some games. Xavier, led by Sean Miller, also won some games as well. But Illinois is so talented, I think they can get past this game here, move to Sunday. And then after that, this 3-14 matchup between Kentucky and Troy should be a win for Kentucky. There's no more Coach Cal curse here where they're going to lose to the 14 seed like they did last year with Oakland. But Mark Pope has his guys playing, but they're a little banged up. We don't know what the status for Lamont Butler is, Kentucky's star. And if both these teams, both Kentucky and Illinois, make it to Sunday, I think Illinois can get past a hobbling Kentucky team, which has been a little inconsistent, especially recently, because Illinois has the talent with Tommy Visic, with Casper Straukonis. These guys leading the charge.
Bryce Johnson back as well for them.
Exactly. They have the depth. They have the experience. Will Riley, the Big Ten Sixth Man of the Year. That's incredible depth to have for an Illinois team, which has always complained about getting a rough draw in the tournament. You got a good draw here.
This Illinois team this year going into the tournament, it's so different from last year because last year they had a solid lineup with Terrence Shannon Jr., Marcus Damas, and Coleman Hawkins. I believe I heard they had 7 different starting lineups since January because of all the illnesses and injuries that they've had to deal with.
Oh, yeah. And Tommy Visic being one of those guys that miss a lot of time, but they're healthy. They're healthy. They're here. We want to point to the loss they had to Maryland in the Big Ten tournament. Maryland just ran them out the gym. Sometimes it's just not your night. Brad Underwood kind of mentioned that, especially on Sunday after the selection special was over. They're here now. They're experienced, and they know what it takes to win games. They have what it takes to win games. They have the height, they have the passing, and they have the shooting.
You would hope that the adversity for a team like this, that the adversity they've experienced early on this season will really help them at this point of the year as well. Okay, when I look at this region in the Midwest, Houston, to me, I feel like potentially has a pretty easy path to the Final Four.
When we talked about the easiest path to the Final Four.
Because I look at that team, there's not a glaring weakness to the Cougars.
You're right. They're one of the most sound teams, and I want to stick right here with this Tennessee team, where we talk about a team that can light it up. Sakai Ziegler, one of the best defensive point guards in the nation, a very experienced player as well. But if they can get past the winner of UCLA, Utah State, and play the winner, like I've been saying, my pick is Illinois here, going all the way here to the Sweet 16. If you have Illinois against Tennessee, remember what happened earlier this year? Tennessee knocked off Illinois with a buzzer beater. It was a heartbreaking moment. You got to know Illinois is looking forward to a potential rematch there.
All right, I want to get to our very last region, which is the West. Okay, I think this West region is probably the toughest to me.
By far. And the reason is because you have this. Florida is running a gauntlet right now. They're so talented.
Playing their best basketball right now. And of course, you have the back-to-back defending champs, UConn as well. 4 SEC teams in this region too.
Also, Porter Moser at Oklahoma, a guy that is very familiar with the tournament from his time at Loyola. But also, you have Memphis with Penny Hardaway. Also, with Illinois transfer Dane Danger, they're experienced. Don't rule out Colorado State with Nico Medved as the head coach there. Also, Kevin Willard is the guy to watch, especially in this specific matchup here. It's a lot of classic coaches that have found success in the tournament. We're talking about Bobby Hurley here at UConn, but also when you think about these guys here, they have a chance to make a lot of noise, but also we don't know. We don't know what this is going to look like for a UConn team that's trying to go for its third straight national championship. Todd Golden's Florida team is humming at its highest right now, but you got to get that consistently all through the end of the bracket.
This is also potentially a really fun region to me as well, because you've got 7 seed Kansas taking on 10 seed Arkansas, 2 seed St. John's, 15 seed Omaha. We could potentially be seeing John Calipari and Rick Pitino going head to head.
Don't you love that? Like I said before, I said Bobby Hurley's Danny Hurley. But when you think about some of the coaches that have found a lot of success, Nico Medved, Danny Hurley. When you talk about Dennis Gates at Mizzou, one of my favorite coaches as well. You talk about Kansas with Bill Self, John Calipari at Arkansas, Rick Pitino at St. John's. There's so many coaches that we know that have success, that found success in the tournament, but also a lot of newcomers. Mizzou is that team to watch. I think they can get past Drake because when they are shooting on all cylinders, they are hard to stop. They were one of the few teams that was able to beat Alabama when Alabama was shooting firing on all of its cylinders as well. But also, you can't rule out Bill Self's teams. You can't rule out Coach Cal's teams as well. These coaches have found success in the tournament for a good reason. Kansas has Hunter Dickinson. They have the talent to do it. They don't have that much depth. But if you can get up on an Arkansas team, which has made mistakes before, it goes up against a St. John's team, which is, man, their defense is something. 3
of the top 6 offenses are in this region, one being Texas Tech. That team can score on just about anyone.
I know. And
I think they're the best number 3 seed in this bracket.
You're right, because they can score in bunches, and I'm really looking forward to a Texas Tech Mizzou matchup where you have 2 high-octane offenses just going at it. Whoever misses the most amount of three-pointers is a team that gets kicked out.
All right, so give me first off, before we leave this region and talk about our Final Four picks, your overall evaluation of this region.
Yeah, it's tough. Oh, man, it's tough. It's going to be so much fun to watch. And there's so many possibilities that we're looking forward to. I think the UConn-Florida 1-8 matchup, the defending national champs against the hottest team in college basketball right now, is a really good matchup. But also, if you take Kansas, advance them all the way to the Sweet 16. Take Mizzou, advance them all the way to the Sweet 16. You have one of the biggest rivalries in college basketball in the Sweet 16. Who doesn't want to see that? Who doesn't want to see that?
It's March. We want to see chaos because that's what we are all here for. All right, before we let you go, let's talk about our Final Four picks. You give yours first.
Right. My Final Four picks specifically are going to start with Michigan State. I think one of the most complete teams. I think they're one of the most experienced teams. They also have the coaching to go with it. I think St. John's is playing at a high level right now. That there's no way that if you look at this team's defense, how consistent they've been all season, going up against a Michigan State team, it would be such a fun game to watch. You know, whoever creates the most turnovers wins. Whoever makes the most turnovers loses. I'm really looking forward to that kind of that potential of that Final Four. But then you have Alabama. We saw them last year do it with their offense. I think they can do it again this year with Mark Sears running the point. But also, how can you argue with Houston? How can you argue with Houston, one of the best teams in the nation right now, one of the most consistent, one of the most experienced, with one of the best head coaches?
All right, my Final Four, I also have Michigan State. I've got Florida, Duke, and Houston, and then I've got Houston winning it all. As I said earlier, I mean, if it is Kelvin Sampson's year to win it all, it is this one. He's got a veteran group with him. They've won 26 of their last 27 games. They are a team that's filled with depth. They're physical, and there's really no weakness to this team. So, all right. That is my Final Four. I've got Houston winning it as well. Chris, any last thoughts before we let you go?
Michigan State's my pick. They're going all the way.
Easiest path to the Final Four?
Easiest path to the
We
Final
both have them there.
Yeah, we'd say they take advantage. In my world, they take advantage. In your world, Houston takes advantage.
All right, well, that will do it for us. Thanks for joining us here on Chicago Sports Overtime.